Gayathri, thank you so much for joining us on the Road Less Traveled. It's a series we've just initiated with Network Capital and Your Story to talk to many people like you who've done interesting things, not necessarily followed the beaten path, tried to chose their own path, and today through your story to be able to inspire other young entrepreneurs or the idea of entrepreneurship. This is not just about an entrepreneur, but it's also about being entrepreneurial. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Gayathri, my first question is just to go back to the early years, right? I mean, you and we at Game, we all live in a way, in a sense, in the world of entrepreneurship, but it's not necessarily the go-to thing for most Indians. It's still a job that holds more allure. It's the natural way of being. Do you remember that moment when entrepreneurship beckoned, or you suddenly said, oh, I am an entrepreneur, or I want to be an entrepreneur?
Actually, it happened very late for me. I've been working in the development sector all my life. So it was more to do with the fact that I wanted to work on a cause. So I looked at it from a perspective of saying that an entrepreneurship is probably the way to sustainability. So if you want to continue to do the work that you want, it has to be done in a sustainable manner. I think it's from there that I really felt the only way out I felt was a social enterprise. Otherwise, it tends to be very project oriented, and I wanted to get out of handling a project at a time to really ensuring that in a sense a cause is addressed.
It's interesting you say that, because the one idea that has resonated in the last couple of conversations I've had is finding your purpose, and that becomes your journey too. Would you say that's right for you too?
Absolutely. I think for me it started from that. The fact is that I felt that a country like ours, given the amount of underemployment which is there, needed to be addressed. And the youth really come, those who drop out are the ones who come into this sort of what we call the large informal sector. And that sector requires consistent effort. So for me, it was that which drove, instead of activities, I thought, what is the way in which to do it is has to be, the entity has to be different. If the entity is not different, you're not able to achieve the goal. So purpose 100% was the front runner to taking that decision.
But there must have been some risks and challenges. I mean, of course, the journey is always paved with risks and challenges. That's the journey of an entrepreneur. But in the early days, Gayathri, could you talk us through some of those early risks and challenges when you thought, what have I started?
I think my first one was underestimating. I came from a world in which money is given, because I was in the side where you have to write the check, right? I was worked at ILO. So my the way I would be measured is how much money I spent. The spend is your determination of your efficiency. Suddenly, when I started this, at a personal level, of course, there was a lot of trepidation, because I think everybody felt it's a secure job, it's well-paying, and at the end of the day, ILO is a UN organization, so it's pensionable, all of those issues, right? So why leave it and start something unknown? At a personal level, there was that whole thing that the second was, do you know what you're getting into? So that was the next whole question is, are you really sure? Do you know what you're getting into, etc. At a professional level, I think my first foray into it flopped very, very badly. So I think that was a huge learning experience, saying that, you know what, I don't even know how to run a business. So it was every single thing that I had assumed didn't happen. So I knew to do developments. I could register workers, I could give social security, but I could never, it didn't make money. So in that case, where was the question of sustainability? It sort of reinforced the general opinion that I knew how to run a project, but would I know how to run a business? That was a big learning for me. And over the years, it's been more of that, learning every single aspect of running a business has been an up and down exercise, where you feel you've learned a little bit and then you go back in time
It's an
and it's
ongoing process.
especially for me, it's been, yes.
Actually, everyone says. I mean, I haven't had a single conversation where they said there was anything they had to unlearn and learn again. Um, Gayatri, what were your first 100 days like? If you can flash back, because they say some of your trickiest times. Of course, it can extend beyond that, but those first 100 days, it's also new. You're being faced with so many new ideas and things to do. Can you take us through that first 100 days,
So I
or
told
an
you,
anecdote?
I think, as I told you, the first 100 days were my biggest flop in my career. It also I think in a sense I was very complacent. I
Hmm.
hadn't faced big failure till then. Things happened very smoothly. Education happened. In a sense, it's fairly prestigious. Career happened. So I didn't face too much failure. So the first time, the 100th day, if you may call it, was like, oh my, you bombed really badly. It was I was staring at not having money to pay salaries, not knowing what I'm supposed to do. How am I going to get up? What am I going to do? I believed in the cause, but how are you going to really? What is the model?
Hmm.
I think that was the key question which had to be answered. I remember, calling on various experts from IIMB to come in and say, you guys help me strategically be part of it. Somebody was from Wharton, very supportive people who came. And then I realized that all that is fine, but buck stops with me. I can't,
Yeah.
I can't say, listen, why don't you just, you know, carbon copy your knowledge onto me and make this work. At the end of the day, it had to be where I took that call.
Yeah.
And the call I had to take was, you know what, you're not good enough to do it. You need a partner.
Hmm.
So bury your ego and go find somebody who knows how to do it, and share. So ability to build a team and to share your vision and have someone share your vision was I think my biggest learning, that you can't do it yourself. B, strategic advice alone is not enough. You need hands on. And C is, you can't be this egoistic. So all three were great lessons in the first 100 days for me.
I
Now
think
when I look back now, Lakshmi, I think I'm back at the same since the lockdown. I'm starting to feel like that.
no, but what you said is so true. I used to be with United Seed Fund earlier, and one of the things we always looked at when we made investments was, is there a are there co-founders? Nobody comes with a one size fits all and knows all of the answers. So I think you learned that very early. So that's an amazing lesson to share, Gayatri. I want to continue on that thread a little, just a little more. What do you think the trait you had that held you in good stead? What was that trait that you had that you can tell entrepreneurs? We call them entrepreneurial traits. Maybe it's just a Gayatri trait, but what was that trait you think that held you in good stead and saw you through that time?
I think perseverance has always been my sort of almost middle name. I don't give up easily. Sometimes it can be stubbornness, but I'd like to put it a positive spin on it and I think I don't give up. So perseverance to ensure that I reach. It's the path I don't think is that important. I think the goal is important. So yeah, I I think the trait to be flexible has been always good for me, while being persevered. I would say that is an important. I would say that's really what defined me all through my life.
Have you had a strong support system from
Very
when you started being an entrepreneur, Gayatri? Or was it
exceedingly
alone?
strong, exceedingly strong support system.
And that was
Uh,
mostly
both at
family? Or?
No, both family and professional. If I look at professional also, I have been incredibly lucky. I've been incredibly lucky. If I look at even when I was, when I told you the first 100, my first model didn't work, I had exceedingly supportive, both even as an impact investor, the grant funders who had come in, and then Brian, Matthew, Sohini, who were from CHF, were incredibly supportive as people. Um, uh, then, um, uh, then post, if I look at now, I don't know who else could have been better impact investors than Dell Foundation and Acumen for us. Um, as individuals, there was literally an angel investor called Reena Mittal. So she lived, and almost had a movie scene meeting with her. I was at the Sankalp event where we were sitting near a fountain, and I was trying to relaunch LabourNet with my current partner and co-founder. So I was sitting there and just sitting there and talking and saying that I'm going to do this, and this is the idea and model. And she said, "Can I fly down to Bangalore and look at investing in you?" So
Wow.
uh, I keep saying that it couldn't have been more filmy than that. All we needed was the roses and the Hindi music. Bollywood was there, but that was the kind of support.
Yeah.
Then there was another bad spot also in the in our journey in the last decade or so, where we got incredible people coming in to say, what, will support you and take it forward. So from a professional perspective, I would say I've got an incredible support mechanisms, people, institutions which have supported. In a personal capacity, of course, I've had. I mean, I don't know which other family would have tolerated me. I've been on the road all through my life, whether it's my parents, my children, my husband. It's let's just say they've had to be very tolerant.
Your Reena Mittal story, much as it's a lovely story, and it like you said, a bit filmy, but I think it's a consequence of your purpose meeting your perseverance and therefore serendipity. I think you were ready for it, and you met, and like you said, the family support right through must have been incredible. Do you have a inspiring entrepreneur story, Gayatri? An entrepreneur that's inspired you watching that person's journey? Have you come across a story, one more than any other?
See, Muhammad Yunus there is somebody I really, really look up to. Whenever I read, I feel it's the first time I'm reading about Yunus's story. Um, the sort of the various paths that he's adopted, right? The goal has been one, the mission has been one, but I think the way he's addressed it is really something which has inspired me. So if you ask me above anybody else, I would say Muhammad Yunus's personal journey, and the way he's handled a country, an institution, a concept has been exceedingly inspiring.
Uh, he is, especially since I've also worked closely around impact investing. I'm inspired by a lot of what he's written and said and done. Gayatri, we are having this conversation in the time of COVID. So we can't, in a sense, have a conversation and not address the context. But I wanted to talk about the optimistic part of it. I mean, if there is anything that's more than optimistic, the opportunity, right? And as an entrepreneur, your organization, have you been faced with where we are today and seen it as an opportunity that you can build on, or is it just been a
No,
problem?
I think I absolutely see it as an opportunity. And I'll tell you two things I feel. It's not only for LabourNet as an opportunity, but I think it is for the entire sector. Um, the whole vocational training space has really never really come to life, right? It's stunted. It is literally a dwarf sector. It suffered in various ways, fair comparisons, unfair comparisons, inability to reach goal, whatever, it's had its problems. When I look at it like that, I feel the COVID is, we were in ICU, and now you had a rebirth, right? When you're out of an ICU, you've got to live your life differently.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what it is for us, right? So in LabourNet, we said what is our tagline? It's enabling livelihood. So we said if it's enabling livelihood, let's go do it. So micro entrepreneurship and full-time employment, if this can be the front runners, and the horizontal becomes your continuous learning. Because now you don't have the restriction of a classroom anymore.
Absolutely.
That's gone. And it's, we don't have to defend it anymore. Otherwise, you have to defend, what Gayathri studied, Satya studied, Lakshmi studied, whatever, XY studied. All of us went to this classroom. We did classroom, we did practical, and therefore vocation has to be taught that way. And you know what? 80% of the people in this country have not learned a vocation that way.
Exactly.
So, but because we did this, we want to define the way the other 80% have to learn. So I think this is a beautiful time for us to say, COVID, you came, you are the bad guy here, and we've changed, So therefore, we can change the way we want to teach. So an actual earn and learn is possible now. You have to redefine earning itself. So I think as far as LabourNet's concerned, I have tremendous optimism that this is one time we can actually just step back and make a heck of an impact.
That's really good to hear, because I really agree with you, right? I mean, we can't run away from what the disease is doing, but what we can do is question our way forward and reinvent ourselves and do things we may not have done before, right? We may have got lazy in the way we functioned.
I think that's a good one. I think what was happening was laziness, plus I feel it's middle class. It is our upbringing which defined vocational education and employment.
We like defined frameworks, and we're
now that's all gone. It's all gone. It's up in the end. So you can define it any which ways. You can paint any which ways. So I feel it's a moment in which, the next 2 years, if we succeed in painting it right, we're really going to be changing. Things could change so much that it could be a defining point in history. Anyway, COVID is a defining point. But for employment, for the poor, and learning for the poor, it could be a real game changer.
Gayathri, I'm going to change our conversation slightly now. I'm just going to have a rapid fire and ask you a quick set of questions. I know you already mentioned Mohammed Yunus, but if there's anyone you could have lunch with today, social distancing apart, who would that person be?
Who would that person be? Interesting. Ronnie Screwvala.
Can you quickly tell me why? I'm always a bit curious. Why Ronnie?
I think the way in which he transcends business and education, not in the sectors that we are, but broadly, I think is very interesting to me. And it's very high profile, right? So when I'm saying high profile, I don't mean it in the profile sense of it, but from a cause perspective, the way in which he puts it across, I think that's been something that I've really admired.
The mistake you've made that you will advise other entrepreneurs not to make, the young upcoming entrepreneurs, and if you look back and say, if I can share some advice, this is what it will be.
I think and I'm going to get exceedingly specific now. I think cash flow is very important, which is something I've not always paid attention to. And that's been a consistent problem with me, so I feel every entrepreneur should be very cash flow focused. Compared to everything else, I've had increased respect for the neighborhood entrepreneur who often does very well. That is what they pick up, which most of us who are sort of
the MBA entrepreneurs who don't necessarily think with that wisdom.
Yeah, I'm not the MBA, but I still made the same mistake. So without the education, I took the bad characteristics. Let's put it that way.
No, and I spoke to Shraddha the other day, Sharma, and she said the exact same thing. And Kiran Shaw also kind of referred to the same thing. The next question I'm going to ask you, I keep asking it because it may seem obvious, but I'm going to still ask you: failing and learning, or success without learning?
Failing and learning.
And you think you would have said this even at the time you were failing? Or it's a hindsight?
The last 13 years, I've had innumerable failures. But I think each one of them has been a huge learning experience for me. And I wouldn't give that up for anything. I mean, I needn't have failed. I could have succeeded there. But having said that, I think I have taken away a tremendous amount of learning from it. It also, I think, it has taught me humility. It has taught me to respect people who otherwise I'm not sure I would really have really been perceptive enough to notice. So to me, I think that is an invaluable lesson that failure gives you. It gives you perspective.
Switching tracks again, does Gayathri have a lockdown hobby? Everybody has a lockdown hobby because suddenly they have 24 hours while it's been busy times. They've had time to either learn how to bake. I'm always surprised how many people are baking. Have you had the time, Gayathri? Or even just watch something on Netflix?
Unfortunately, I think because I've been in a lot of the relief work, there has actually been, the lockdown has been busier than anything else, I've learned new skill sets. For example, I've never done emergency food distribution. So the whole logistics of arranging food on every road, I have new respect for, how do you reach food to Nagpur, to the road there. So I have very new respect for some of those things. Now, healthcare, migration, how do you buy train tickets for people who want to come back, who want to go back? So this whole lockdown has been one roller coaster learning experience for me. New domains, new issues. So I've actually had more time before the lockdown than I've had now. I'm just chock-a-block full.
5 years from now, Gayathri, where would you like to be?
I think I'd like LabourNet to be what we call a collaborative cooperative.
Do you want to say a little more about that?
See, I feel what is important. Enabling livelihood is, of course, important. But increasingly, you're going to have more and more employment in the kind of micro-entrepreneur gig areas. In that case, I think we have to change the way in which institutions work. How do workers get 80% to 85% of the revenues of a company? Is there a way we can change that? And is that, can that be our sort of North Star? How do we provide access to accelerator support to really small, what we would have called self-employed, and actually make them micro entrepreneurs. How do we ensure full-time employment is more secure? And by that, I'm not saying in the same company, but is there a way to look at consistent reskilling of people in order that they become relevant? So I think, to me, if I'm able to ensure that in 5 years, by taking the organization in that direction, I'd really feel that we've achieved something.
So cheers to your 5-year vision. I'm going to end with one last question, Gayathri. Do you have a quote that you live by? An inspiring quote that you live by?
I'm gonna read one which I really like and have always liked it. Start by doing what is necessary, and then do what is possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible.
Wow.
So I really love this at all points of time. This has been my favorite quote, and this is what I think I live by.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great note to end our conversation. Thanks, Gayathri, for joining us. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much.
Bye.